Welcome to English Listening Practice. I'm glad you're here today. Let me ask you a simple question. When you hear English, do you automatically translate every word into your native language? If your answer is yes, you're not alone. In fact, most English learners do exactly that. But what if I told you that one of the biggest steps toward fluency is learning to think in English? Today, we're going to explore what it really means to think in English, why it can feel difficult at first, and how you can gradually train your mind to do it naturally. So, take a moment to relax, listen carefully, and let's get started. When people begin learning English, translation feels like a useful tool. You hear an English word, you translate it, you understand it. Everything seems logical. For example, you hear the word house. Your brain immediately finds the equivalent word in your native language. Problem solved. At least that's how it feels. But over time, something interesting happens. The translation process starts becoming a barrier. Imagine that someone asks you a simple question in English. Maybe they ask, "What did you do yesterday?" Your brain hears the question. Then it translates the question. Then it creates an answer in your native language. Then it translates the answer back into English. Only then do you speak. That entire process can take several seconds, sometimes even longer. Meanwhile, the conversation keeps moving. This is one reason many learners feel nervous when speaking English. It's not always because they lack vocabulary. Sometimes it's because they're trying to run every sentence through a translation machine inside their head. Now, imagine a different situation. Someone asks you the same question, you hear it, you understand it directly. An idea appears in your mind, and you answer. No translation, no extra steps, just communication. That's what thinking in English feels like. And although it sounds difficult, it's something that every English learner can develop. Let's think about how children learn their first language. When a child sees a dog, nobody gives them a translation. They simply hear the word dog while looking at the animal. Over time, the word becomes directly connected to the image. The child doesn't translate, the child understands. This is exactly the type of connection you want to build with English. You want English words to connect directly to ideas, objects, actions, emotions, and experiences. The good news is that you can start building these connections today. Let's look at a simple example. Imagine you're sitting in your room right now. Take a moment and look around. Maybe you see a chair, maybe you see a table, maybe you see a window. Instead of saying the words in your native language first, try naming them directly in English. Chair, table, window, door, wall, lamp. This may seem like a small exercise, but it's actually very powerful. You're teaching your brain to connect English words directly to real objects. No translation required. Another useful technique is describing your day in English. You don't need complicated grammar, you don't need perfect sentences. You simply need to practice creating thoughts in English. For example, imagine you're making breakfast. You can say simple things in your mind. I'm making coffee. The coffee smells good. I'm hungry. It's a beautiful morning. These small thoughts may not seem important, but they train your brain to operate in English. And the more often you do this, the more natural it becomes. Now, let's talk about a common mistake. Many learners believe that thinking in English means using advanced vocabulary. That's not true at all. In fact, thinking in English often begins with very simple language. Imagine a person who knows only a few hundred English words. Can they think in English? Absolutely. They might think simple thoughts like, I need water. I'm tired. I want to go home. It's raining. Those thoughts are simple, but they're still happening in English. Fluency doesn't begin with complexity. It begins with simplicity. As your vocabulary grows, your thoughts naturally become more detailed. One day, instead of thinking, I'm tired, you might think, I've been working all day and I think I need some rest. The process develops gradually. There's no need to rush. Another challenge many learners face is fear. They worry that their English isn't good enough. They think they need perfect grammar before they can think in English. But that's not how language works. Think about your native language. Do you always speak with perfect grammar? Probably not. Most people don't. Communication isn't about perfection. It's about expressing ideas. The same principle applies to English. You don't need perfect English to think in English. You simply need enough English to communicate an idea. And every day, your ability grows a little stronger. Let's imagine a student named Maria. Maria studies English every evening. She watches videos, she learns vocabulary, she completes grammar exercises, but she always translates everything. One day, she decides to try something different. While walking to work, she starts observing the world around her in English. She sees a bus. She thinks, the bus is late. She sees people waiting. She thinks, they look tired. She notices the weather. She thinks, it's going to rain today. At first, these thoughts feel slow and unnatural. But after a few weeks, something changes. English begins appearing automatically. The effort becomes smaller. The process becomes faster. Eventually, Maria realizes that she's no longer translating every thought. She's simply thinking. This is how progress often happens, not through one big breakthrough, but through hundreds of small moments of practice. Another excellent way to develop this skill is through listening. Listening and thinking are closely connected. The more English you hear, the more familiar the language becomes. Think about your favorite song. After hearing it many times, you begin remembering the words automatically. The same thing happens with English. When you regularly listen to podcasts, videos, audiobooks, and conversations, your brain absorbs patterns. Certain expressions become familiar. Certain sentence structures start feeling natural. Over time, these patterns become part of your own thinking. This is one reason listening practice is so important. You're not only improving comprehension, you're also building the foundation for thinking in English. Let's consider another example. Imagine you're watching a cooking video in English. The host says, "Today we're making a simple pasta dish." You hear the sentence, you understand it, you continue listening. Eventually, your brain stops focusing on individual words. Instead, you focus on ideas. This is a significant step, because real communication happens through ideas, not individual words. The more often you focus on meaning instead of translation, the closer you move toward thinking in English. Now, let's be realistic. There will be moments when translation is still useful. And that's okay. Translation isn't the enemy. It's a tool. The goal isn't to eliminate translation completely overnight. The goal is to depend on it less and less over time. Think of translation like training wheels on a bicycle. Training wheels help you learn, but eventually, you want to ride without them. English learners follow a similar path. At first, translation provides support. Later, direct understanding becomes the goal. Another powerful strategy is reading. When you read simple English stories, your brain begins creating images. You see the characters, you imagine the locations, you follow the events. If the story is easy enough, you often stop translating because you're focused on what happens next. This is one reason extensive reading can be so effective. You're training your mind to experience English directly, without constantly switching back and forth between languages. Let's talk about patience. Many learners try thinking in English for a few days and then become discouraged. They expect immediate results. But language learning rarely works that way. Remember how long it took you to develop your first language. Years, thousands of conversations, countless experiences. Learning English follows a similar process. It requires repetition. It requires exposure. It requires time. Fortunately, every small effort helps. Every sentence you read, every podcast you hear, every thought you create in English, all of these moments are helping your brain build new pathways. And eventually, those pathways become stronger. One day, you may notice something surprising. You're walking down the street, you're making lunch, you're cleaning your room, and suddenly you realize you're thinking in English without even trying. It happens naturally, not because you forced it, but because you practiced consistently. These moments are exciting because they show that real progress is happening. And once you experience them, you'll want to continue. So let me ask you another question. What if you started today? What if, for the next week, you spent just 5 minutes each day thinking in English? Not studying, not translating, simply thinking. You might be surprised by how much progress you can make. Remember, fluency is not built in a single day. It's built through small actions repeated over time. Thinking in English is one of those actions. It's simple, it's free, and you can practice almost anywhere. As we come to the end of today's episode, take a moment to reflect on your own learning journey. How often do you translate? When do you feel most comfortable using English? What small changes could you make this week? Perhaps you could describe your surroundings in English. Perhaps you could think about your daily plans in English. Perhaps you could listen to more English content and focus on understanding ideas rather than translating words. Small changes can create powerful results. Today, we've explored what it means to think in English and why it's such an important step in language learning. We talked about moving beyond constant translation. We discussed connecting words directly to ideas. We explored simple exercises that can help train your mind. And most importantly, we learned that thinking in English doesn't require perfection. It simply requires practice. The next time you hear English, try focusing on meaning instead of translation. The next time you learn a new word, connect it directly to an image or experience. And the next time you catch yourself thinking in English, even for a few seconds, celebrate that moment. It's a sign that you're moving forward. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope this episode has encouraged you to approach English in a new way. Keep listening, keep learning, keep thinking in English. And remember, every small step brings you closer to fluency. Thank you for listening to English Listening Practice. I'll see you in the next episode.